Great. And let's go ahead and let's give this some class names. So class names are going to be W-56. Text is going to be extra small. Font is going to be medium. Text is going to be black on dark. Text is going to be neutral 400. And space -y is going to be 2 pixels like this. Great. So first thing we're going to add is the option to invite people. So both moderators and admins can do that. And if you look at our our constants here, we can use the isModerator to check whether the user is either an admin or a moderator. So all we have to do is add isModerator and let's go ahead and write drop-down menu item. Again, from add/components UI drop-down menu. So just confirm you have drop-down menu item from components drop-down menu. And inside, I'm going to write invite people like this. And you can see how I have a small little invite people box right here. So I'm sorry this is so zoomed out, but if I zoom in, it's going to turn into mobile mode and you're not going to see absolutely anything. Okay. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's give this some class names. So class name is going to be text-indigo-600. Dark is going to be text-indigo-400 like that. Px is going to be 3. Py is going to be 2. Text is going to be small. And cursor is going to be pointer like this. Great, so let's see that. There we go. So now invite people looks a bit better. And now let's add an icon. So user plus from Lucid React. Make sure you have that imported. So I have chevron down and user plus from Lucid React. Great. It is a self-closing tag and let's give it a class name of h-4, w-4 and ml-auto like this. There we go. So now you can see how nice this looks. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and let's just copy and paste this below like this. So now we have 2 items. If I click, I have twice the invite people. And let's change this to isAdmin like this. And let's just modify this to not use any text indigo. So you can remove this text indigo. So just make sure that this class name, this dropdown item has the padding on top and on the sides, a small text and a cursor pointer. Instead of invite people, this is going to say server settings like this. And instead of user plus, we're going to use the settings icon from Lucid React. So make sure you have chevron down, settings and user plus from Lucid React. Great. And only an admin can see the server settings and only an admin can open that model when we create it. Great. So let's go ahead and copy this again. Just fix the indentation. And this one is also going to be just for the admin. So we can leave this if and change the server settings to manage members like that. And instead of using the settings icon, we're going to use the users icon from Lucid React. So just make sure you have that imported. Great. So now we have invite people, server settings and manage members here. Perfect. And now we're going to go ahead and add a new one. So just copy and paste that. But this one is going to be visible for both admins and moderators. So we can just use isModerator because every admin by default is also a moderator. And let's go ahead and change manage users to create channel like this. Great. And let's change the users icon to plus circle from Lucid React. So just make sure you have plus circle from Lucid React. Great. And if I click now, I have server settings, manage members and create a channel. Great. Now let's go ahead. After this, let's just add another isModerator and this one is just going to render a drop-down menu separator from add/components UI drop-down menu like this. So make sure you have this imported from UI drop-down menu and not from Radix. Okay, so you can see how I have this small little line here at the bottom. So only admins and moderators need this separation because guests are only going to have one action and that is to leave the server. So no point in showing this separator then. Great. And now we can just copy and paste this one from above. So from above this separator and paste it here. Okay. And instead of saying is moderator, this one is only going to be for the admins. So is admin like this. And instead of create channel, it's going to say delete server like this. And instead of plus circle, we're going to use the trash icon from Lucid React. So make sure you have imported the trash icon from Lucid React. Great. And now I have this delete server right here. And let's just add a class name to this drop-down menu item, which holds the delete server, to use text-rows-500 like this. Great. So we can see now when you click, delete server is a red, meaning that it's a dangerous action. Great. And now let's go ahead and copy this one last time. And we're going to create the last one. And this one is going to be very simple. So we're going to do the opposite of is admin. So we're going to just add an exclamation point. So if we are a moderator or if we are a guest, basically, if we are not an admin, only then we're going to have the option to leave the server. So admins cannot leave the server. Admins can only delete their own service. And instead of the icon trash, let's use the logout icon from Lucid React. So make sure you have logout like this. And now I actually cannot see that because I am an admin, but guests and moderators will be able to see that. Great. So let me just expand this entire thing and zoom in so you can see how this looks. There we go. Invite people, server settings, manage members, create channel, and delete server. Perfect. So we're going to now create models for all of this right here. So now let's go ahead and let's create our invite functionality, which is the first drop-down action right here to invite people. In order to do that, we first have to visit our use model store. So let's go inside of the hooks and pick the use model store right here. And alongside create server, go ahead and add a pipe. And this one is going to say invite. So just invite like this. Great. Now we have to extend our model store a bit. So alongside model store, we're also going to have an interface, model data like this. And for now, model data is only going to accept a potential server. So it doesn't have to, but if we want to, we're going to send in a server. And you can pass that from Prisma/client like this. Great. And now inside of here, after type, add data, and data is going to be model data like this. Great. So now go ahead and add a data in here, and by default it's going to be an empty object. And now extend this is open to also accept a data prop, which by default is going to be empty, which means we also have to change it in this on open right here. So go ahead and add data, optional data, model data like this. Great. So we added data, model data, and on open we added data here, and we defined the potential items we can send in a model. Great. So alongside setting the type, we're also going to set the data. So let me just expand my screen. So on open has a type and a data. And if we pass in the data, it's going to be stored in our model store. So for example, right now we're going to have to open our invite model with some information about that server. So that's why we're going to send the server inside the data using this on open function right here. Great. So let's go back inside of our server header, which is inside components, server header right here. And at the top right here, above the is admin, let's add const on open from use model like this, from add/hooks use model store. So make sure you have use model imported from add/hooks use model store. Great. And now let's find the first drop down item, which says invite people. And we're going to add an on click here, which is going to open that model. So let's go ahead and write on click like this, an arrow function on open. We're going to open the invite model, and we're going to go ahead and pass in the data, so just an object like this with a server like this. So this is the equivalent. We're just going to use a shorthand operator like this. And where do we get this server from? Well, we have it in the props right here. Great. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and we can create our invite model. Great. So let's go ahead and let's close everything here. Let's go inside of our components, models, and you can just copy the create server model and paste it again and rename it to invite-model like this. Great. Let's go ahead and let's remove this form schema. We're not going to need it. That means that we can also remove this entire form right here. So you can remove that. You can also remove this is loading, and you can also remove this on submit right here. Same thing for handle close. So you can remove that as well. And you can change this handle close to directly use this on close from use model. So just on close like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's remove this entire form. So we don't need absolutely anything here. You can go ahead and remove this entire form. So just leave the dialog header ending here, and you can just write invite model like this. Great. Let's also remove the router like this. Let's rename this to invite model like that. And you can now remove all of these imports. We don't need them. Same thing for form like this. And you also don't need the dialog footer. Great. And same thing for all of these components here. Great, so we have a very simple model right here. Just make sure you're doing that inside the invite-model. And now let's change this is model open to not look for the create server, but for invite like this. There we go. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's add this invite model to our model providers. So go inside of your providers, model provider like this. And go ahead and below create server model, add invite model like this from /models/invite model. And I'm just gonna go and replace this to /components like this. There we go. And I think that already now we can try and press on invite people, and there we go. So you can see how we have this invite model right here. So let me just zoom this out so we can work with this model. So I'm going to click again. Okay, there we go. Now let's go ahead and let's go back inside of our invite model, which is inside of our components models invite model right here. And let's change the title. So it's not going to be customize server. It's going to be invite friends like this. And we don't need the dialog description. You can remove that. And you can also remove this dialog description import like that. Great. So now go below the dialog header here, remove this invite model text and create a div. This div is going to have a class name of padding 6 like that. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's add a label here. So label from /UI/label. So make sure you've imported this from /UI label, but we're going to change that to /components like that. And let's just join these two together. Great. So we have the label here, and let's just write server invite link like this. Great. So you can see how it now says server invite link here. Let's go ahead and let's give this label a class name, which is going to be uppercase text-xs font-bold text-sync-500 dark text-secondary/70 like this. Great. And now below this, we're going to create a div. So below the label, we're going to create a div, and we're going to go ahead and give this div a class name of flex items-center margin top-2 and gap-x-2 like that. Great. So save this, and inside we're going to go ahead and add our input from /UI input. So make sure you import the input, and I'm just going to replace this with components like this. Great. So inside of this input, let's go ahead and let's write a class name, which is going to be bg-sync-300/50 border-0 focus-visible ring-0 text-black and focus-visible ring-offset-0 like this. Great. Let's give it a value for now of invite link. So we're just gonna hard code invite link like this. Great. And alongside this input, but still inside of this div, let's add a button from /UI button. So make sure you import this button right here. And let's replace this with components like that. Great. And in here, we're going to give it a size of icon like that. So go ahead and just write a copy from Lucid React icon. So make sure you've imported copy from Lucid React. I'm going to move it to the top, just below the use client like this. And let's go ahead and let's give this a class name of W-4 and H-4 like this. Great. And now outside of this div right here, let's go ahead and add another button, which is going to say generate a new link like this. So just below this, we're going to have this generate a new link. So now let's go ahead and style it a bit. So first thing I'm going to do is variant is going to be link like this. Size is going to be small like that. And class name is going to be text-extra small and text-sync-500 and margin top is going to be 4. There we go. So we have a nice generate a new link text right here. Perfect. Now inside of this button, we're going to add refresh CV like this, lowercase w. There we go. So refresh CV. And let's make sure you import that from Lucid React. Okay, now let's just style it a bit. So let's go ahead and let's give it a class name of W-4, H-4, and margin right -2 like this. Okay. And let's just modify this. So instead of margin right, let's use margin left. There we go. So now it's better. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and let's create one hook, which we're going to need to read the current URL. So let's go inside of our hooks and create a new file, use-origin.ts like this. Great. And inside of here, we're going to write export const use origin like that. This is going to be a very simple hook. So const mounted, set mounted, use state from React, default value is false like this. Use effect, also import that from React, empty dependency array, and set mounted is going to be true like this. Great. Now let's write const origin to be type of window is not undefined like that, and window.location.origin question mark window.location.origin or an empty string like this. So let me just zoom out so you can see this in one line, and let me also expand my window. So like this, origin is a type of window. So if type of window is not undefined, and if we have the window location .origin, in that case, render the window.location.origin, otherwise render an empty string. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's write if mounted like that, return null. So if we are not mounted, make sure you put an exclamation point here, and you actually don't have to return null. You can also just return an empty string. Otherwise, return origin like that. Great. So just make sure you have this hook. You can close this now and go back inside of your invite model. And let's go ahead and let's add that hook now. So just below this use model, const origin, use origin, from /hooks, use origin like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's create a constant here. So const invite URL is going to be backticks at origin like this, and copy this invite URL and replace the value of this input where we hard-coded the invite link. So just change it to a dynamic invite URL. So now it says localhost 3000 in this invite friends. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's extract the model data which we passed. So in order to do that, what we have to do is just extract server from data. And we need to make sure to extract the data from use model like this. And then we can use this server to extend this invite URL. So add /invite /server, open special object, server ? .invite code like this. There we go. So now let me just show you. You can see that in my model, I have a /invite and the invite code from my database. Great. So let's go ahead and let's continue developing this model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some constants. Const copied, set copied to be use state from React. The default value is false, so make sure you import use state from React. I'm just going to move it here to the top like that. And let's also add const is loading, set is loading, use state false. Like this. Great. Now let's create a function to actually copy this. So const on copy is going to be an arrow function, which is going to call the navigator.clipboard .write text invite URL like this. So we're going to copy this constant invite URL using the origin /invite and the invite code. Great. And we're going to set copied to true. And then we're going to add a timeout like this. Set copied to false after 1000 milliseconds equaling to 1 second. Great. So you're going to see what that does now. So let's go and find the copy button. So it's this one inside of this div, which has our input and has a copy Lucid icon inside. And let's give it an on click on copy like this. Okay. And now let's just change this. So if it's copied, in that case, we're going to render check icon from Lucid React. So make sure you import the check from Lucid React. Otherwise, we're going to render this copy icon, so you can remove it from here and paste it inside. And you can copy this class name here and paste it here. There we go. So we can also display this like this, so it's a bit clearer. There we go. And now you can see how this effect is going to look. So I'm going to zoom in back into my model. So when I click copy, you can see that I get a check mark and then it's back to copy it again. Perfect. Great. So what I have to do now is a function to regenerate this link. So let's go ahead and let's write that function. So below the onCopy, let's write a const on new to be an asynchronous function like this. Open a try and catch block. In the catch error, we're just going to console log the error. And in the finally, you're going to set is loading to false, which means that in the try block, we're going to set is loading to true like this. Great. And now let's just write const response to be await Axios, which you can import from Axios. So make sure you import Axios. I'm just going to move it all the way to the top here. Great. So await Axios dot patch, open pointy brackets, open backticks, /API /servers /server.id /invite -code like that. And just put a question mark in the server.id like this. So let me just expand this so you can see it in one line. And there we go. So const response is equal to await axios.patch /API /servers, the server ID, invite code. So we're going to use this Axios patch to refresh the invite code. And what we're going to do now is we're going to call our onOpen again. So make sure you extract that from use model. So let me zoom in back. So we're going to call onOpen again from this use model hook. And we are literally going to open the very same model. So invite model, and we're just going to update its data by passing server to be response.data. So we're going to get the updated invite code, and then this server invite code, this constant, is going to get immediately refreshed. Great. Now let's use this as loading for some disabled states. Great. So let's go ahead and let's find our input. Right here, let's give it a disabled. Off is loading, like that. Let's give the copy button a disabled if we are loading. And let's give the regenerate a disabled if we are loading, like that. Great. So now if you try and click on this, actually we have not assigned what actually calls this on new function. So let's go ahead and let's find our generate a new link button and give it an on click to call on new like this. Great. So now if I try and click generate a new link, I'm gonna get a 404 Axios error. There we go. So I get a 404 in my console because we have not created that route yet. So now let's go ahead and let's do that. So let's head into our app folder. So right here, we can close everything. App folder, API, servers, and you're gonna have to create a new folder, server ID, inside of brackets like this. And inside create a route.ts like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and write export asynchronous function patch, which has a request of type of request, and it has params. And let's give them a type. Params is an object which holds the server ID, which is a type of string, and we know that because this folder has a server ID name. Great. So now that we have that, let's open a try and catch block. So in the catch, let's log the error. So console log server ID and just paste in the error like this. And let's return new next response from next/server like this, internal error, and just pass in the status of 500 like this. Great. In the try block, let's go ahead and fetch the profile. So const profile is await current profile from add/lib current profile like this. If there is no profile, in that case, return new next response unauthorized with a status of 401 like this. Status. There we go. And now what we have to do is check if we don't have the params server ID. So if there are no params.server ID, return new next response server ID missing with a status of 400. Great. And now let's actually update our server. So const server is equal to await db, which you can import from add/lib db. So make sure you do this. Great. And now let's write await db.server.update like this, where id is equal to params.server ID and profile ID is equal to profile.id like this. Great. And data is equal to invite code. And what we have to do is generate a new invite code. In order to do that, we have to import our UUID library. So import v4 as UUID v4 from UUID like this. Great. So just go back to the invite code and call the UUID v4 and execute the function. So only an admin will be able to do this call because we are checking for the profile ID that created this server. So no need to check inside of the members and then find some and then find the role or profile ID. So no need to do anything like that. We can just check the profile ID because the only profile ID that's possible to be in this server is the creator of the server. Great. And now that we updated this server, let's just return new next, so next response.json and pass in the server like this. Great. Perfect. So now let's try what happens. So I'm gonna refresh this. I'm gonna click invite people and I'm gonna click generate a new link. And let's see if we are still getting some errors. So I'm generating a new link. Okay, it still says that it's 404. So let me just go ahead and debug this. All right, so the mistake is very simple. So you can see that I'm pointing at /invite code, but I never created that route. The route that I created is server ID route.ts. So what I have to do is create a new folder, invite-code inside of this server ID folder and drag and drop this route inside. So just move it like this. There we go. Save the file again. Let's refresh this now. And if I am correct, after I click on invite people and generate a new link, There we go. You can see how the invite URL changes every time we click generate a new link. Perfect. So what we have to do now is the actual functionality that when someone enters this inside of their URL, they actually join this server. Because if you try and paste this now here, you're gonna get a 404 because we never created this page. So now let's go ahead and let's do that. So let's go back inside of our app folder. So I'm gonna close everything here. Just make sure you saved all of these files and make sure that your generation is working. Okay, and now let's go back inside of the app folder and let's create a new organizational folder called invite, like this. And this invite is not gonna have any layout. It's just gonna have routes like this. And inside, let's create a new folder called invite, like that. And inside of that, create another folder in brackets, invite code, like this. And that's gonna be our page.tsx. Great. So invite organizational folder, routes organizational folder, invite folder, and invite code folder, which is dynamic. Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's write invite code page like this. You can just return a div hello invite. For now, it doesn't matter. It's not going to have any content. It's just going to do and it's just going to add you to the server and then redirect you to the server. So let's go ahead and let's create an interface. Invite code page props params invite code is a string like this. So make sure that this invite code inside of the params matches the folder name. So invite code, it needs to be the same. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's extract the params here and let's just map that to invite code page props. Perfect. Let's make this page asynchronous so we can do some calls to the database now. So first one we're going to do is fetching the current profile. So const profile is equal await current profile from add/lib current profile, like I've imported here at the top. Great. If there is no profile, in that case, return redirect to sign in from clerk next.js. So I'm just going to separate those two. Great. Now, if there are no params.invite code, return redirect from next/navigation. So make sure you import redirect from next/navigation. I will move that to the top as well. And we're just going to redirect to the root page. So if the user doesn't enter the invite code, we can just return them back. Now let's check if the person trying to join this server is by chance already in this server. So for that, we're going to write const existing server to be await db and import db from add/lib/db like I did right here. Great. So await db.server.find first like this, where invite code is equal to params.invite code. So if it matches and if members sum profile ID is equal to profile.id. So if we match the invite code of the server we are trying to join, and if we are already a member of that server, in that case, all we have to do is redirect the user back to that server. No need to join again. So if existing server, return redirect open backticks /servers/existing server.id inside of this special object. Perfect. And now let's create a case to join the server. So const server is equal await db.server.update like this, where invite code is equal to params.invite code like that, data, and we have to create a new member. So members create open an array, open an object, profile ID is equal to profile.id. And we don't need to explicitly give it a role of guest, because by default, everyone who joins is going to be a guest. Great. So let me just check what this error is about. All right, so I found our mistake. Our mistake is in our schema. So let's go ahead. You can save this for now and just ignore this error and go inside of your Prisma schema.prisma right here. And you can see that here for the invite code, I put a string and a db.text. No need for that. You can remove db.text and instead add unique. So now we are able to query and find unique servers using this invite code. So my mistake. And now remember, every time we modify our schema Prisma, we have to run two commands. So shut down your application and run npx prisma generate. So this is gonna update this to our node modules, and you can already see how the error in my page went away. And now npx prisma db push like this. And what happened now is that we added a specific change that is causing incompatibility with our current data in the database. So we're gonna have to remove all of our servers so far. And you can just press Y to confirm this. There we go. And now let's npm run dev this again, and let's see if we lost our servers. So this is normal to happen during development. When you modify the schema Prisma, you're often going to create new relations, new rules, which cause stuff to fail. So it looks like ours is still working here. So what I actually prefer that you do is reset your database. So just so we are working with correct data. So let's shut down the application and run npx prisma migrate reset like this. So this is going to remove our entire database. So confirm this pressing Y on your keyboard. And after you do this, you have to run npx prisma generate again and npx prisma db push again. And then you can go ahead and npm run dev your application again. So npm run dev again. And now if I refresh on this local host, I should get redirected back to the root page with the initial model telling me to create my server. Perfect. Because no data exists. So I'm going to create my new server again. I'm going to call it code with Antonio like this. I'm going to click create. And after this refreshes, I should be back to the server ID page. Perfect. And now I have my sidebar, I have my invite code, and if I generate, there we go, it works. Perfect. So now let's head back inside of our invite page. So let's go back inside of the app folder, invite, routes, invite code, page.tsx right here. Perfect. So once we find this server using the unique invite code, which we just served, and we create a new member who is trying to join, all we have to do then is redirect them to that new server. So if there is a server, return redirect backticks /servers/server.id like this. Great. And instead of this, you can just return null like this. So I just said we're not actually going to render anything here. Instead, we are first going to fetch the current profile. We're going to check whether we have an invite code or not. We're going to check if the user is already a part of this server. If it is, we're going to redirect them to that server. Otherwise, we're going to update the server using the unique invite code, which we just modified in our schema Prisma. So now it's unique for every server. And we modify the data, we modify the members, and we create a new member using this profile ID. And because our members, so let me just scroll to members, our default value for the role is guest. We don't have to explicitly write that here. So just profile ID is enough and no errors in our code. Perfect. So what we have to do now is we have to try this out. So what you have to do is, well, let's test this with logged in users. So I just copy this either like this or use the copy function. Right now I'm already in this server. So let's see what happens once I paste here. What should happen is I should get redirected back to my server, and that's exactly what happened. Perfect. And now what you have to do is log out and log into another account and try and paste that in your URL. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to log out and enter a new account. There we go. So I just logged in a new account, and you can see that it's asking me to customize my server because I have not joined or created any servers in this new account. So I'm going to go inside of my URL, and I'm going to paste that which I copied from a previous invite model. I'm going to paste, and let's see if this is going to add me. And there we go. I am now part of Code with Antonio. You can see right here that I have a completely different icon. So this is my different account. And since I am a guest, look at this. I only have the option to leave the server. That is my only option here. Perfect. So you successfully finished the inviting. Great. So what I suggest you do is that you log in back into the account that is an admin on this server so you can continue developing all the other options. So I'm just going to do that quickly. There we go. So we completely wrapped up our invite people. We can generate new links. So now that I clicked generate a new link, if the person tries to send that old URL to someone else, it's no longer going to work because it changed in the database. So that's how cool this generate a new link is, because we can easily invalidate links if we don't want them to be spread around. Perfect. So you finished the invite friends model, you confirm the functionality works, and next thing we're going to do is the server settings. So now let's go ahead and let's create this server settings model right here. So in order to start doing that, we have to go back inside of our use model store. So go inside of the hooks and find the use model store. We have to find our model types, and we have to extend it by adding edit server like this. Great. So now that we have that, everything else can stay the same. So we already have the model data to pass the server information, and we have that configured in our onOpen function. So we needed this for the invite model, and we're also going to need it for the edit model. Great. Let's go now inside of our components, models, find the create server model, and copy and paste it here. And rename this copy to edit-server-model like this. Go ahead and rename this constant, but just make sure you're actually inside of the edit server model and not accidentally in the create server model. And rename this to edit server model like this, and modify this is model open to check for edit server like this. We're gonna leave everything as it is for now. Great. I'm going to close everything here. I'm going to go inside of my components, providers, model provider, and below the invite model, I'm going to add edit server model like this from /models edit server model, and I'm just going to modify it to /components like this. Great. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and let's find our components. Server header right here, and we already have this on open destructured from the use model. So let's use it the same way we did for invite people. Let's add an onClick for this drop down menu item which holds the server settings. So let's write onClick, an arrow function, onOpen, edit server, and let's pass in the server as the data like this. Great. So now if you go ahead and try and click on server settings, you should see the model to create the server. Perfect. So I'm going to keep this open, and I'm going to go back inside of my components, models, edit server model right here. Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's actually modify some things. So in the use model, we're also going to get data like this. So below this constant is model open. Let's extract the server from it. So server is equal data like this. Perfect. And now let's add a use effect, which is going to fill these values with existing data. So use effect from React, like I did right here. Make sure you add this import. I'm just going to move it here like this. In this use effect, you're going to create an arrow function. Yep, that's correct. My apologies. So like this, add the dependency array, and inside we're going to check if there is a server from this data which we destructured. So if we pass the data when we clicked on open from the server header, we're going to call form.setValue to be name server.name like this, and form.setValue image URL is going to be server.image URL like this. Great. And now let's just pass in the necessary items in the dependency array, which are going to be the server and the form like this. And there you go. Once I saved, you can see that now my model is showing the information from this server. So if I click on server settings, there we go. I have my icon and I have my server name. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's modify this create button. So it doesn't need to say create, it needs to say save. So I'm going to find the create label and change it to save like this. There we go. Now it says save. Perfect. And what we have to modify now is our onSubmit function. So it doesn't need to call the Axios post to API servers. Instead, it needs to call axios.patch, and the URL is going to be a bit different. So we can remove this. Instead, add backticks and write /API/servers/ open curly brackets server ? .id like this. So we changed from post to patch and we modify the URL to target a specific server ID to edit. Perfect. And now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's create a route which is going to do this. Because if you try right now, I'm going to prepare my console right here. So if I click save, it says 404 not found. So let's fix that by actually creating that route. Let's go and let's find our app folder, our API, our servers, server ID. Inside, we already have the invite code, but I want you to create a route.ts file inside of this server ID file. So new file route.ts. So you can see how now I have a route inside the server ID folder and I have a separate invite code folder here. So this is actually the thing that we did before I figured out that I have to create a new folder, if you remember. So just make sure you have a route.ts inside of the server ID where your invite code folder is, but not inside the invite code folder. Great. And inside of here, let's go ahead and let's develop the patch function. So export asynchronous function patch like this, which takes the request, which is a type of request, and it takes params. And let's map that object, params, to be a server ID, which takes in a string like that. Again, make sure that this server ID here matches the folder server ID. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's open a try and catch block. So let's get the error from here. Let's log it for development purposes. So server ID patch error like this, and return new next response from next/server internal error with a status of 500 like this. Perfect. And now let's develop the actual patch function. So first let's get the current profile. Const profile is equal await current profile from add/lib/current profile, and I'm immediately going to separate those imports. Let's go ahead and let's check if there is no profile. So if there is no profile, return new next response unauthorized with a status of 401 like this. Great. And now let's write const server to be await db.server.update. And let's not forget to import db. So import db from add/lib/db right here. So let's find the server using the server ID. So ID is equal to params.server ID like that. And let's modify the data. And the data we have to modify is name and image URL. So in order to do that, we first have to destructure it. Let's do that below this profile. So const destructure the name and image URL from await request.json like this, and pass in the data, name and image URL like this. Great. And one more thing, in the where clause, let's also add profile ID to be the current profile which we loaded .id. So only an admin can modify the server settings. Great. And now let's just go ahead and return new next next response.json server like this. There we go. So let's go ahead and let's attempt to modify this server now. So I'm going to write, let me just refresh everything. So now it says code with Antonio here, also when I hover here. But if I go to server settings and change this to edited server, let's see if that's going to work. So I clicked save and there we go. Now it says edited server and here it also says edited server. Great job. You successfully finished the update function of the server. So the next one is to create and manage some members. So let's go ahead and let's create the model, which is going to open when we click on manage members right here. So let's go ahead and let's visit our use model store. So go inside of the hooks and find use model store right here. And we have to add another type of model. This one is going to be called members like this. We don't have to modify anything else in the model data. We're still going to be working with just the server as the data. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's go inside of our components folder, models, and go ahead and copy the invite model, because I feel like this one is going to be the easiest to modify in order to match what we need for the manage members model. So just copy this invite model, paste it inside of models and rename it to members model like this. Perfect. Go inside of the newly created members model and let's rename it to members model. And the only thing we're going to modify is this is model open. Instead of looking for invite, it's going to look for members like this, the same that we defined in our use model hook right here. So make sure it matches this members type right here. Great. And now let's close everything. Make sure you saved all of those files. Go inside of components, providers, model provider right here. And below the edit server model, add the members model like this. And what I'm going to do is just rename this to add/components. So you don't have to do this, but I like it that way. Now let's go ahead and let's find our server header function in this server folder. So not server sidebar, but server header. And inside, find the drop-down menu item which says manage members. And using the same method, we're going to call the onOpen, which we destructured from the use model hook. So onClick is going to be an arrow function which calls the onOpen members and passes in the server as the data. Perfect. So let me just expand this. I'm going to refresh this page and let's go and click to manage members. And there we go. It opens the invite friends because we copied it from that model. Perfect. So I'm going to keep this open and let's go ahead and let's actually start developing here. So I'm closing everything inside and I'm going inside of components, model, members model right here. Perfect. So first things first, we are not going to need this origin, so we can remove that and we can remove the hook for importing the use origin. We're also not going to need the invite URL right here, so you can remove the entire onCopy function as well. You can remove the entire onNew function as well. We are not going to need this two states, so you can remove copied and state copied like this. And you can also remove everything inside of this div. So this div, which has a class name of padding 6, which is just below the dialog header, you can go ahead and select everything inside of that div and remove it like this and just write hello members. So it should look something like this, a very, very simple model. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's change the title from invite friends to manage members like this. Great. And now let's go below and add dialog description from add/components/UI dialog. So don't accidentally import it from Radix. Let me show you my import right here. So dialog description from add/components UI dialog. And you can go ahead and remove these imports for now. If we need them again, we are going to add them. There we go. So these are the only imports I have. I have the dialog and I have the use model from the use model store. All right. Inside of this dialog description, what we are going to do is we are going to count our members. So I'm going to write server ? members ? length. And after that, I'm gonna say members. So it's gonna say 5 members or 0 members. And let's take a look at what happened. So we have the correct number right here. It says 2 members. We're gonna style it and position it. But our TypeScript is throwing an error. That is because inside of our use model, so let me just go inside of the use model, we define the model data to be server. But we're looking for members here. So what I'm going to do is a very quick TypeScript fix for this specific use case. Go ahead and find inside of the members model this destructuring of server from the data. And what you're going to do is write data as open an object, and inside all you're going to do is server and give it a type of server with members, with profiles from @/types. There we go. So just import this server with members with profiles. So let me show you how this looks in one line. So const server is data as an object which holds the server, which is a type of server which has members and their profiles. And now this TypeScript error is no longer here, and we can safely iterate over the members. Perfect. Great, and now let's go ahead and let's give this description some styling. So go to dialog description and give it a class name like this. And let's go ahead and let's write text center like this and text-sync-500 like that. There we go. That looks much better in my opinion. Perfect. Let's go outside. Yes, one more thing that I want to do is I want to put the dialog description inside of the dialog header. So I closed this dialog header too early. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this dialog description and I'm just going to paste it below the dialog title like this. There we go. And just save. Now there was a slight difference, so now it's a bit closer to the title and it's following the correct semantic approach to doing this. So the dialog header component is now wrapping both our dialog title and our dialog description. So all I did was moved it from outside of the dialog header inside of the dialog header. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's remove this div right here. And instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add scroll area from /UI/scroll area like this. So I'm gonna rename this to add/components like that. Make sure it's not accidentally imported from Radix. Great. Inside of this scroll area, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a class name of empty-8, max height of 420 pixels, and PR-6 like this. Great. Inside, we are going to iterate over these members and map them as well as their actions. So let's go ahead and write server ?members ?map like that. Let's get the individual member and let's go ahead and let's create a div with a key of member.id like that. And let's give this div a class name of flex items-center gap-x-2 and margin bottom of 6 like this. Great. Inside of this div, we're going to create a new component called user avatar. So in order to do that, let's first render it user avatar like this. And now we're going to get an error. So let's go inside of our components folder and create a new file user-avatar.tsx like this. In order to continue developing here, we need to add a component from Shadcn UI. So let me expand this screen and let's go ahead and let's find the avatar component right here. And let's use this command from the CLI to add it to our project. So I'm going to shut down my application. I'm going to write this command right here. npx shadcn-ui at latest add avatar and just press enter and confirm the installation. Once that is done, you can go ahead and npm run dev your project again. Great. So I'm just gonna go ahead and refresh my application because I shut it down. So make sure it's all loaded. Let's just wait a second and let's click back on the manage members. And there we go. I have the very same error again. So let's go ahead and let's import avatar and avatar image from @/components/UI/avatar like this. So I'm doing this inside of my newly created user avatar component. And inside, I'm also going to create an interface user avatar props to have an optional source, which is a string, and a class name if we want to modify it as a string as well, and also optional. And export const user avatar like this, and let's just destructure these items inside, so source and class name, and let's map them to our props, so user avatar props like that, and let's return an avatar, avatar like this, we already have that imported, and avatar image like this. Let's give it a source of source like that, and now let's give this a dynamic class name. So it's not going to use strings, instead it's going to use the good old cn from @/libutils like this. Let's go ahead and let's open this. Let's add some default classes here. So that's going to be height 7, width 7. On medium devices, height is going to be 10. On medium, width is going to be 10 as well. And let's also pass in the class name as our optional secondary prop in case we ever want to modify this. Perfect. Now we can go back inside of our members model and we can actually import the user avatar from /user avatar. And I'm going to rename this to /components like this. There we go. So let me refresh this project again and let me find the manage members, and there we go, no more errors. Perfect. So find your scroll area below the dialog header inside of this members model right here. And for this user avatar, you're going to go ahead and pass in the source, which is going to be member.profile.image URL like this. And there we go. You can see that I have two members inside of my project here. So inside of my server here, because if you remember, we tested the invite functionality. So that's why I'm logged in here with two of my accounts. Great. So let's continue with this now. So first thing I want to do is just add a bit of padding to this scroll area. But I'm not going to do that directly on the scroll area. Instead, I'm going to find my dialog content right here, and I'm just going to go and remove this padding 0 from here. And there we go. You can see how now my model looks much better. Perfect. So just below this user avatar now, we can go ahead and render the user's name and their role in this server. So below this user avatar right here, let's go ahead and let's add a div, which is going to have a class name, which is going to be flex-call and gap-y-1 like this. And inside, go ahead and open a div with a class name again, text-extra small, font-semi-bold like this, flex and items-center like that. And inside, let's just go ahead and render member.profile.name like this. There we go. One thing I want to do now is a role icon map, so an object which is going to render our icon depending on the role. So whether a user is a guest, moderator, or an admin, we're going to display different icons alongside their name. So let's prepare that by going to the top, and let's go ahead and let's add a const role icon map like this. Let's open an object. Let's write guest null moderator shield check from Lucid React. Make sure you do that import as I did right here. And let's give it a class name of h-4 w-4 margin left -2 and text-indigo-500 like that. And last one is going to be admin. This one is going to use shield alert from Lucid React. Let's give it a class name of h-4 w-4 and text-rows-500 like this. Great. So now that we have that prepared, let's go ahead and let's go just below our member profile.name, and let's go ahead and render role icon map. So that constant object we just created, and let's pass in the member.role inside like this. And there we go. You can now see that I have a little shield icon next to me right here. Perfect. But let's just add a bit of a padding next to it. So let's see how we can do that. We can go and just add a gap-x-1 like this. And there we go. Now it looks much better. So I added a gap-x-1 to this div, and now they look a bit better. Perfect. And now what I want you to do is go outside of this div, but still inside of this one. So just below this one, holding a name and the role map, and add a paragraph in which we're going to render the member.profile.email like this. Perfect. And let's go ahead and let's add a class name right here, which is going to be text-extra small text-sync-500 like this. There we go. Perfect. So what I want to do next is I want to add options on the side right here, which are going to be triggered, which are going to trigger either changing the role of a user or kicking them from the server. So before we do that, let's go ahead and let's add a loading state for a specific member ID. So below this use model, go ahead and write const loading ID set loading ID equals to use state from React. And its default value is just going to be an empty string like this, and make sure you've imported use state from React. Great, so now that we have this loading ID, let's go ahead and let's find this server members right here, and just below this ending of this paragraph and below ending of this div, go ahead and write server.profile ID is not equal to member.profile ID, and loading ID is not equal to member.id. And we're going to render a div which says actions like this. So there we go. We are not going to show any options for the admin of the server because we cannot kick the admin of the server, and we cannot degrade him by changing them to moderator, right? So we can only do that with guests and other moderators. Perfect, because only an admin has access to this model right here and to the API functions. Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's add a class name to this div, which for now just says action, and it's going to be ml-auto like this. There we go. So it's at the end. I'm just going to zoom in a bit out so you can see better how that is supposed to look. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's import everything we need from our drop-down menu. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to the top, so we have a clear separation of our imports. And now let's go ahead and let's import the following from @components/UI/dropdown-menu like this. Let's import the drop-down menu content like this. And let me just see what is the mistake in this one. So I just made a typo, my apologies. So it's drop-down menu content, drop-down menu item like that, drop-down menu portal, drop-down menu separator like this, drop-down menu sub, drop-down menu sub content like this, drop-down menu trigger, and drop-down menu sub trigger like this. So all of this: menu, content, item, portal, separator, sub content, trigger, and sub trigger are the components we are going to need to render the actions for each member. Perfect. So let's go ahead. Let's remove this label which says action, and let's say drop-down menu like that, which we have imported. Now let's add the drop-down menu trigger, And let's go ahead and give it an icon of more vertical from Lucid-React. So make sure you import more vertical from Lucid React. So you should have the shield alert, you should have the shield check, and more vertical. Perfect. And let's go ahead and give this more vertical a class name. The class name is going to be h-4, w-4, and text-sync -500 like this. So a nice little vertical dots. Perfect. Now let's add the drop down menu content and let's give it a prop of side left like this. Now inside, let's go ahead and let's create a drop down menu sub like this. And let's add a drop down menu sub trigger inside like that. And the drop down menu trigger inside is going to have a class name of flex and items dash center like this. And inside add an icon shield question from Lucid React. So make sure you imported shield question and put it inside of the menu sub trigger like this. Let's go ahead and give this a class name. So class name is going to be w-4, h-4, and mr-2 like that. And go ahead and give it a span of role like this. So when I click here, now we have a role. And once we hover on that, we're going to have which options to change the user from. Perfect. So let's go ahead. And after this drop-down menu sub trigger, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a drop-down menu portal like this. And inside drop-down menu sub content like this. Great. And now inside we're going to write drop down menu item like this, and this one is going to say guest like this. So let's see if that works. There we go. So now when I hover, it gives me an option to turn this user into a guest. Perfect. So let's just make this a bit prettier. So above this guest text, let's add a shield icon. So import shield from Lucid React. So I have shield alert, check, and question. Great. Let's close this self-closing tag. Let's give it a class name of h-4, w-4, and mr-2. So let's see how that looks. There we go. And one more thing I'm going to do is below this guest text, I'm going to do a conditional. So if member.role is equal to guest, in that case, go ahead and render a check icon from Lucid React one more time. So import the check. Great. Let me just find where we are. Okay. And inside of here, I'm going to give it a class name of h-4, w-4, and ml-auto like this. So after I hover, I should have a check icon next to guest because this user is only a guest in my server. Perfect. So I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see this structure better. Perfect. So it's very long because we have the drop-down menu and inside we have a sub menu and a sub trigger, and then we need to do a portal. So yes, you can always visit my GitHub if you have a feeling like what you're doing is wrong. Don't worry about it, but just follow slowly and you should have no problems. Perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add another drop-down menu item, the same as I did for this guest right here. So let's just go ahead and let's copy that and paste it here. And instead of guest, this one, so I just added a new one below the menu item here. Instead of guest, this one is going to be moderator, which means that member role we're going to check for is moderator like this. Let's see how that looks like. So role, there we go. And let's just modify from using the basic shield to shield check. And we already have that imported. There we go. So now you can see that the guest is selected, but moderator is not selected. Perfect. And great, so those are the only roles we can change for, so no need to do anything else here. Perfect. So now go ahead and find where drop-down menu sub ends, and before the drop-down menu content ends, go ahead and add drop-down menu separator like this. We already have that imported like that. And inside, just add a simple drop-down menu item like that. My apologies, it's not a self-closing tag. So close it like this. And all we're gonna say is kick like this. So let's see how that looks. There we go. Perfect. So we can kick and change the role. Let's just go ahead and style this a little bit. So I'm gonna use the gavel icon or gavel like that from Lucid React. And let's give it a class name of h-4, w-4, and margin right -2 like this. There we go. So we can now kick and we can change from guest to moderator and vice versa. Perfect. And one more thing I want to do, you can find where this conditional content ends right here and just write loading ID is identical to member.id. So if we currently made any Axios request for this ID, either kicking them or changing their role, we're going to display a small spinner. So go ahead and add loader to from Lucid React. Make sure you import that from Lucid React. It is a self-closing tag. And we're going to give them a class name of animate-spin text-sync -500, margin left, auto, w-4 and h-4. So let me demonstrate how that should look if I change this. There we go. So we're gonna have this little spinner. So just bring this back to loading ID is identical to member ID. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and let's create the functions which we are going to call to kick the user and change the user role. So let's do the role change first, because once we kick the user, we have to do the whole invite thing to get them back into the server. All right, so go all the way to the top before we return anything. And let's go ahead and write const on role change. It's going to be an asynchronous arrow function like this. It's going to accept member ID as its first parameter, which is a string, and a role, which is a type of member role, and you can import that from @prisma/client. So let me just zoom out a bit so you can see the function in one line. On role change, a synchronous function which accepts the member ID and the role. And let's find the member role here. So @prisma/client, and I'm just going to move it to the top with the other imports. Perfect. So what I'm going to do inside is I'm going to open a try and catch block. So let's do the catch one first. I'm going to go ahead and write console log error like that. And let's do finally set loading ID to be an empty string, which means that in the try block, we had to set loading ID to be member ID like that. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and install a package which is going to help us with generating URL queries. So let's go ahead and shut down the application and run npm install query-string like this. Perfect. Let's go to the top and let's import QS from query-string like this. So let me run my application again, npm run dev like this, and I added this import QS from query-string. I'm going to refresh this page. And let me just open this model again. So every time you shut down your application and run npm run dev, make sure to refresh the page. Perfect. So let me zoom this in a bit and let's continue working with this here. So let's go back inside of our on role change function and let's write const URL to be qs.stringify URL like this. The first argument is going to be URL, which is going to be backticks /API/members/member ID like that. So we are going to target this API route and we're going to add the query to be server ID, server ?.id, which we have from the data of the model store, and member ID, which we are going to modify like that. Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's write const response to be await Axios, which you can import from Axios. So make sure you do that. I'm just going to move it to the top of my imports like this. Perfect. Await Axios.patch URL, because this is going to create a string. If you take a look, it's going to return a string. And let's go ahead and pass in the role as the change. Perfect. And after that is ready, let's go ahead and call a router. Whoops, we don't have the router, so let's add it. So at the beginning of your members model, just write const router to be use router from next/navigation like this, and make sure you've imported the router from next/navigation. And I'm just adding it to the top with the other imports. Perfect. So we have this router now. So let's go call router.refresh right here to update our server components. And then let's call onOpen. Let's see if we destructured it here. So we did. Make sure you have onOpen destructured from the use model right here. Perfect. Let's call the onOpen to call this members model. But all I want to do actually is update the data. So I'm going to pass the server to be response.data like this. There we go. So now if you try, well, we can't try anything yet. We have not added we have not added this function to any onClick. So copy this on role change and let's go ahead and add it where needed. So I'm just going to zoom out just a bit. Find this role span and go ahead and find this drop-down menu item, which has a guest label and has this check and this shield right here. And in this drop-down menu item, add an onClick. Let me just collapse this in a new line. So onClick is going to be an arrow function, which is going to call on role change to be a member.id and guest as the role I'm changing it to. So when we click on guest, which is this thing right here, so when I click on guest, I'm gonna call the on role change, passing the current member ID that I clicked on and a guest as the new role for that user. Perfect. And I'm gonna do the same thing for this one where it says moderator right here. So on click is going to be an arrow function on role change member.id and moderator like this. Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's try that now. I'm going to open my inspect element here, and what I'm expecting is that when I click on guest or moderator, I get a 404 error. So when I click here, there we go, we have a 404 not find. Perfect, that's exactly what we need because the route doesn't exist, but our local client functions are obviously working. So let's go ahead and let's create that route now. So I'm going to close everything for simplicity now. And let's go inside of our app folder, inside of API, and create a new folder called members like this. And inside, go ahead and create another folder. In brackets, write member ID like this, and inside write route.ts like that. Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's write this patch function first. So export asynchronous function patch, which takes in the request, which is a type of request, and params, which are type of params, which are an object. We have the member ID, which is a type of string. So just make sure that this folder member ID matches the params member ID. Great. Let's open a try and catch block as always. Let's log for development. So members ID patch error like that, and return new next response from the server internal error with a status of 500 like this. Perfect. Now inside, let's get the current profile, await current profile like this, and make sure you've imported that from lib current profile like that. If there is no profile, in that case, what we can do is return new next response, unauthorized, and give it a status of 401 like that. Perfect. If there is a no, so okay, so yeah, what we have to do now is we're also passing some query alongside our member ID. So before we go any further, below the profile, what I want you to do is add const search params are equal to new URL request.url like this, and const role is going to be, role is going to be await request.json like this. So we need this too in order to check some more stuff. Perfect. And now let's destructure our server ID. So const server ID is equal to search params.get server ID. So just make sure you don't do any typos. This two should be the same. Server ID, capital I. Perfect. And let's go ahead and check if we don't have the server ID. In that case, we're going to return new next response saying server ID missing with a status of 400 like this. And now let's check if we don't have the params member ID. So if there are no params.member ID, let's go ahead and return new next response member ID missing status 400 as well. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and let's actually update this server. So const server is equal await db, which you can import from @/libdb. So make sure you do this import right here. Perfect. Await db.server.update like this, where id is server ID, which we are going to get from our query search params. So usually we are able to do that in this params, but look at our URL. It's not inside of the server ID. It's independent. All right. So we have the server ID and we define that right here. And we're also going to use the profile ID to confirm that only the current profile.id, which is going to be the admin, can modify this. So data members update like that, where ID is params.member ID like that. Profile ID is not the current profile.id, so we don't want our user, our admin, to accidentally be able to change their role if they use just the API. So this is just a check that whoever is updating this is not updating themselves, because only an admin can update this, and an admin cannot change change their own role. So server needs to have an admin. That's the point. That's why we do this protection. All right. And now let's go ahead and let's just pass in the data role like this. So outside of this, where add a data and role like that. Perfect. So outside of this data, you can go ahead and add include. And what we're going to need are members, where we're going to need profile. So include profile true, and order by role ascending like this. There we go. And let's just go ahead and return new next response.json server like this. There we go. Perfect. So now we have this patch function, which finds the server using server ID and the current profile ID as an admin. It looks through the members. It finds the member that matches the member ID param. It checks that it's not the currently logged in member. And then it updates the data role from whatever we pass the role, which is going to be either moderator or admin. And it also includes the members and their profiles ordered by ascending order of role in the results, because we are going to need that to continue rendering this members model. Perfect. So we have this ready. Let's go back inside of our components, models, members model right here. And let me just double check the on a role right here. So I think this can work, but I also think we don't need the member ID in this query at all, because we are actually sending it here. So I'm going to remove this from my query. And let's see if this is still going to work. So I'm kind of confident that it's actually going to work. Let's change role to moderator. It's loading. Let's see. There we go. It's officially working. I'm going to refresh the entire thing just to confirm that even when I refresh, there we go. So this user is officially now a moderator. Let's try bringing them back to guest. There we go. Their shield is gone, and I'm gonna refresh again. So it works 100%. Perfect. And now let's do the kick option here. So the kick option is gonna be, well, really not that difficult. Let's go ahead and first create the local version here. So after, before the on role change in the members model, let's write const on kick, which is also going to be an asynchronous arrow function, which accepts the member ID as a string, and that's it, nothing else. Let's open a try and catch block. So if there is an error, all we're gonna do for now is log this error right here. Whoops, okay. And in the finally, we're gonna set loading ID to an empty string, which means in the try, first thing we do is set the loading ID to member ID like this. Perfect. Now inside, let's go ahead and generate our URL. So const URL is equal to qs.stringify URL like that. And we're gonna do URL to be backticks /API /members/member ID. So the same thing that we have at the bottom. And let's add a query, server ID, server !ID. And I'm pretty sure we don't need that member ID which we added before. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and write const response to be await axios.delete URL like this. Let's call router.refresh after that is finished. And on open members, and let's pass in response.data as the new server data. Perfect. Now what we have to do is we have to create our delete function. So let's go back inside of our route, which is located in API members member ID route right here. And let's do it above the patch function. So export asynchronous function delete like this. It's going to take a request, which is request. It's going to take params, which are a type of params, member ID string like that. And let's open a function. Let's open the try and catch block. Let's do the good old, console logging here. So log member ID delete error. Oops. Okay. So all I did was wrote member ID delete error and return new next response internal error with a status of 500 like this. Perfect. And now inside, let's get the current profile using await current profile. We already have that imported. And we're going to do the same thing. So if there is no profile, in that case, return new next response unauthorized with a status of 401 like that. If, whoops, one more thing. So we have to add the const search params from new URL request.url like this. And const server ID is equal to search params.get server ID like that. Okay. So if there is no that server ID, return new next response server ID missing like that with a status of 400. Perfect. Now let's do if there is no params.member ID, return new next response member ID missing with a status of 400. There we go, and we are almost there. What we have to do now is kick the member from our server. So const server is equal await db, which we already have, dot server dot update again, where ID is server ID, profile ID is current profile.id, and the data which we are going to modify is going to be members like this, delete many ID params.member ID like this, and profile ID should not be the current profile.id. So we don't want the admin to accidentally kick themselves even if they just use the API. So it's one thing to protect yourselves on the front end, but you need to do the same thing on the back end. That's why, regardless of the fact that I'm not even rendering the horizontal dots right here for myself, it's important that I also protect that in the API, because front-end validation can easily be bypassed. Make sure that you always protect your data and your intended functionality on the backend as well. All right, so not profile ID, so that doesn't happen. And after we're finished with this, so that's good enough, let's add include members, include profile, true like this. And let's go ahead and just order by, order by role ascending like this. There we go. So what we are doing is we are updating the server, which matches the server ID, where the current user is the admin. We are looking into the members, and we are going to delete members which match this member ID, but not this profile ID. So we don't want the user to delete themselves. Perfect. And then we include the members and their profiles because we need them for this model. Same thing as the update function. Perfect. So I think that this should all already work. Let's go ahead and let's try it out. So I'm gonna refresh everything for good luck, and I'm gonna go back to my manage members. I'm going to click kick, and I forgot to add the click functionality. Okay, so let's go back inside of the members model. I forgot our on kick is not used anywhere. So let's go all the way down, find the gavel, find the kick text, and on the drop down menu item, add on click to be an arrow function, which calls the on click and passes in the member.id like this. Perfect. So again, I'm gonna refresh for good luck and hope for the best. After I click kick, we get a loading, and it seems like the user is still here. So let's go ahead and let's see what happened. It seems like I have a 500 internal server error. Okay, so the way I'm going to debug this is by looking into my terminal here, and it says cannot read properties undefined reading headers. All right, I'm gonna pause the video and I'm gonna explain to you exactly what I did and how I found this. All right, so what I did wrong and how I found out is I tried this request a couple of more times to confirm that I'm getting the error. So I pressed kick again, I got the error again, and what I did was I peeked back inside of my route where I have the delete function, and I went step by step to see where could this go wrong, and then I noticed that I'm actually not doing anything with this server function, which means that what I have to do is write return next response.json server like this. So that was my mistake. I forgot to return anything from the API route. So inside of your delete function, make sure that you use this server which you update and just return next response.json. So let's go again. I'm gonna go ahead, refresh for good luck. I'm going inside of my members, and as I assumed, yes, so now it says that it's deleted. That's because we successfully actually did this part, the updating and deleting. What was not successful is the returning of this one. So our code works, but just to demonstrate this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click invite people. I'm going to copy this URL. I'm going to log out and go back with my new profile. All right, so I just logged out and I'm going to use that copied invite link in my URL. Let's see if, there we go. I'm successfully part of the server now, and I can only leave it because I'm not an admin. I cannot manage members or invite people or change the settings. So I'm going to go back and log in into the admin now. All right, I'm back. You can see by my icon right here at the bottom, and let's check now. So manage members right here. There we go. So I joined again, and now if I try kick, it should in real time remove my user. Perfect. So you successfully finished managing user, managing their roles, kicking them, and you have a nice little manage members model to see who is an admin and who is not an admin. Perfect. So you have a bunch of working functionalities already. We have to do the create channel and the delete server functionalities next. Amazing job so far. So let's go ahead and let's create a model which is going to open when we click on this Create Channel button right here. So first thing we have to do is we have to visit our Use Model Store. So let's go inside of Hooks, Use Model Store right here. And after Members, go ahead and add Create Channel like this. And we can leave the model data and everything else exactly as it is. Great. Now what I want to do is I want to go inside of my components, models, and I'm going to copy the create server model and I'm going to paste it in the models. Once I have that copied file, I'm going to rename it to create-channel-model because it's going to be very similar. Let's go inside of that newly created file and go ahead and rename the component to create channel model like this and change this constant is model opened to check for the type create channel like this. As always, just make sure you're doing that in the proper file so you don't override your working create server model. Once you've created the create channel model, let's go inside of components, providers, model provider, and let's add that to the bottom after the members model. So create channel model like this, and make sure you've imported it from /models create channel models. And you already know I'm going to replace that to /components because I prefer it that way. Great. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's go inside of our components server header right here. And let's go ahead and find the drop-down menu item which says create channel. Once you're in here, go ahead and add that item an onClick function, which is going to be an arrow function which calls the onOpen create channel like this. Great. And now if you go ahead and try, I'm going to refresh here. And if I click on create channel, there we go. We have the identical model to create server. And now we're going to go and slowly modify it to match our create channel model. Perfect. So I'm going to close everything here. Let's go inside of components, models, create channel model, and let's go step by step and remove what we don't need. So first thing, we have to go to this form schema and remove the image URL because channels are not going to have images. Now let's go ahead and remove that from the default values in the form use form. So you can remove the image URL from here as well. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's find the form and go ahead and find this div which says class name space -y-8 and px-6. And below that, you're going to remove everything, which is just going to be this div which centers this form field which has the file upload. So we are not going to need that. So I'm going to go to the end of that div like this. And I'm just going to press remove and I'm going to remove the extra spaces. And once I save, you can see how that looks. So now there is no more drop zone here for image upload. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's change the title from customize your server to create channel like this. And we can also remove the dialog description because we're not going to need it for this model. That means that we can also go to our imports and remove the import for file upload because we're not going to need it. And we can also remove the import for dialog description because we're not going to need it as well. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's find the form field which says server name like this. So find the form label which says server name and rename it to channel name like this. And we also have to change the placeholder in its respective input to be enter channel name like this. There we go. So now we have a nice model which says create channel, has a channel name and says enter a channel name. Perfect. What we have to do now is we have to add a new component from chat-cn which is going to enable us to use it to pick a type for this channel. Because remember, channels can have types. They can be text, audio or video channels. So let's go inside of chat-cn UI right here and go ahead and find the select component. So it's just below scroll area for me. Go ahead and find the installation right here, copy the npm and go inside of your terminal. I'm going to shut down the application and I'm going to go ahead and add this command. So let me expand my screen. npx chat-cn-ui at latest add select and go ahead and press enter and confirm this installation. Once that is done, you can go ahead and npm run dev your project again. Perfect. So I'm just going to expand this back and as always I'm going to refresh my page here. And once that is done, I'm going to go ahead and open my create channel model again, and I'm just going to collapse my screen like this. Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's import everything we need from that newly created, newly installed select component. So just below this use model, I'm going to add an import from add/components/UI/select like this. What we are going to need is the select component. We're going to need the select content. We are going to need the select item, select trigger, and select value like this. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and let's go inside of our form schema right here and let's modify the rules a little bit. So let's go ahead and let's add the new field, which is going to be the type of this channel. And that's going to be the only options available for this type are going to come from our Prisma schema. So let me just quickly visit our Prisma, schema.prisma. Let's go ahead and let's find the channel, which is right here. There we go. We have the model channel, and in the type we have the channel type. So we are going to use this enum, and we only want these options to be validated. So let's go back inside of our create channel model and let's write z.native enum, and inside we're going to write channel type, and you can import this from @prisma/client like I did right here. And I'm just going to copy it and move it to the top with the global imports like that, and you can save that file. Perfect. And now let's also modify the name a little bit. So it can pretty much look like this, but one thing I want to modify about it is that it also restricts the user from putting the name general inside. So only one general channel can exist. Perfect. So after this min has been finished, so after this, go ahead and add .refine like this. Go ahead and write name to be name is not equal to general like that. And go ahead and open an object for a custom message, which will say channel name cannot be general like this. So notice that I'm using different types of annotations because my message is inside of these double quotes. So use a single quote inside, because if you try and use double quotes, you can see that the string ends here. You can also just write this if you want to, but I want to be more specific by adding single quotes like this. And let's also modify the error message for this name. So it's no longer server name, it's channel name is required. Perfect. So we have modified our form schema to prevent the user from writing general as the channel name. And I think we can already try that out. So if I type general inside, there we go. And now it says channel name cannot be general. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. Now let's go ahead and let's add a new form field, which is going to allow users to select the proper channel type. So let's go ahead. You can ignore these errors for now. We're going to resolve that later. So find the end of this form field right here. So it's a self-closing tag. So find this self-closing tag and go ahead and open a new form field, which is going to be also a self-closing tag. Control is going to be form.control like this. Name is going to be type like that. And render is going to be destructuring the field option like this. And it's immediately going to return a form item like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's just resolve this error, which says that type is not assignable as a name. So we did add it to the form schema, but we forgot to add it to default values. So let's go ahead and add the type here to be like this. There we go. We resolved that now. And let's go ahead and let's see what this is going on about. Okay, so what we have to do to resolve this, I'm pretty sure, well, if you look at our schema Prisma, we use a default value for the channel type here. So let's go ahead and let's change this from an empty string to channel type.text like this. And there we go. So the default channel will have, the default type of a new channel is going to be text, and then the user can switch it to something else. So just go ahead in your form, use form, default values, and set the type instead of an empty string to be channel type.text. And there we go. Now we no longer get that error in our onSubmit form. Perfect. And now we can focus back on creating this form field, where users can select their own type. So we stopped at adding this form item inside of this render prop right here. So let's go inside and let's add a form label, which is going to say channel type like this. And let's go ahead and let's add the select option, which we already have imported, and let's give it some props. So it's going to have a disabled props if we are loading. It's going to have the onValue change to be field.onChange, and it's going to have the default value of field.value like this. Great. Now let's go ahead inside of this select right here, and let's add the form control, which we already have imported. And inside, let's add the select trigger component, which we also have imported. Let's go ahead and let's give it some class names. So class name is going to be bg-sync-300/50, border -0, focus ring-0, text-black, ring-offset-0, focus ring-offset-0, capitalized, and outline-none like this. There we go, perfect. And now inside of this select trigger, go ahead and add select value, which we already have imported. It is a self-closing tag, and let's give it a placeholder of select a channel type like this. There we go. And now below this form control right here, let's go ahead and let's add the select content, which we already have imported. And let's go ahead and do object.values of channel type, which we have imported from Prisma.map, get the individual type like this, and just go ahead. Let me just zoom out so you see how this looks in one line. So just create a .map type, which opens a render like this. And inside, you're gonna go ahead and write select item, which we have imported. Let's go ahead and give it a key to be type. Let's give it a value to be type, and the class name of capitalize like this. And inside, what we're going to do is render the specific type in lowercase, so our capitalized class can work properly. Great. And what we have to do outside of this select, but still inside the form item, is just a form message like this. There we go. And now let's go ahead and let's refresh this entire thing. Let's go back inside of create channel, and there we go. You can see that my channel type now has a default value of text right here. Perfect. So what we have to do now is we have to modify our onSubmit function. So let's go ahead and find the onSubmit right here. And instead of going to /API/servers, what we have to go is go to /API/channels like this. But it's actually not going to be just that simple. So we're going to have to add a query which holds the server ID in its params. So in order to do that, let's add a useful import QS from query-string like that. And then let's go back to the onSubmit function. And let's actually create a stringified URL. So const URL is equal to qs.stringify URL like this. The URL is going to be /API/channels, like we changed below. And we're going to have a query, which is going to hold the server ID, which are going to be params $server ID like this. And it seems like we don't have the params here. So let's go ahead and resolve that before we continue. So go to the top of your function here, or actually you can do it below this use router and just add const params to be use params from next/navigation. So make sure you did this import use params and use router from next/navigation. Great. And now that we have the params, the error should no longer be visible here. Perfect. And now change this hard-coded URL here to this new constant URL, which is going to append this server ID query so we know where to create that channel. Perfect. It seems like our model is now ready to call an actual API route. So let's go ahead and create that first, and you can already try it out. So now if I open my inspect element here, if I try like this, I get an error. If I type general, I also get an error. But if I try test channel, I should get a 404 error like this. So let's resolve that so we actually go to an existing route. I'm going to close everything here. I'm going inside of my app folder, inside of API, and here I'm creating a new folder called channels like this. And inside I'm going to create a new file, route.ts, like that. Let's go ahead and let's write export asynchronous function post like that, which holds the request to be a type of request like this. Go ahead and open a try and catch block. As always, let's go ahead and write console log channels post and error like this, and return new next response from next/server internal error with a status of 500 like this. Perfect. We resolved the catch, and now let's go ahead and get the current profile. So const profile is equal to await current profile from add/lib current profile. I'm just going to separate those imports like this. Great. And let's go ahead and let's destructure the name and type from the body. So name and type, which we are going to send from the form, we can get from await request.json like that. And let's get the search params. So destructure search params from new URL request.url like that. And now let's go ahead and write const server ID to be equal to search params.get server ID like this. There we go. Let's go ahead and check if we have no profile found. In that case, we can return new next response unauthorized with a status of 401 like this. Now let's go ahead and check if we have no server ID. In that case, return new next response missing server ID missing like this with a status of 400 invalid request like that. And now let's check if the user bypassed the front-end validation and actually managed to send an API request with the channel name general. We don't want that to happen. So let's write if name is equal to general. In that case, return new next response. Name cannot be general with a status of 400. So let me just briefly explain why am I doing this general protection. So it's not like I don't want users to have general 1 and general 2. So general 2 is completely fine. I'm doing this because later on, when a user visits a server, we're going to automatically redirect them to a general channel. So that's why I'm protecting this name so our code can stay working. Perfect. You can, of course, after you finish this entire project, play around with the settings and modify them to your liking. Now let's go ahead and let's actually create this channel and update the server accordingly. So this is going to be a bit different because both the moderator and the admin can add new channels. So we're going to write a bit of a different query. Const server is equal to await db. Let's import db from add/lib/db. So make sure you do this import right here. db.server.update like this, where ID is equal to server ID, members is equal to sum, profile ID to be profile.id. So what we've done so far is we created a query that only a member can add a new channel. And now we're also going to check that that member also needs to have a role in open an array member role, which you can import from @prisma/client. So make sure you do this import right here. I'm going to move it to the top. We're only going to allow it to members who are either an admin or member role who is either a moderator. So only those two can do that. Perfect. So now once we finish with our where query, we can go ahead and add the data we want to update. The data we want to update is just channels, create profile ID to be profile.id, and name and type like this. There we go. And now let's go ahead and just write return next response.json server like this. Perfect. So now we can go ahead and actually test this out. The only problem is we are actually not listing our channels anywhere. So let's go ahead and open our Prisma Studio so we can look at data in the database. So I'm going to open a new terminal and write npx Prisma Studio like that. That's going to open a Prisma Studio for me. And you can click on this little plus icon here or just close everything and you will see this options right here and click on channel. Right now, if you have only one server, you should have the initial general channel, which was created when we created the server. And now let's go ahead and test that if once I click this create channel, it's going to work. So I'm going to write test-channel and let's keep the type to be text. I'm clicking create. Okay, it seems like it's working. Let's refresh this channel and we should have 2 channels now. There we go, test channel right here. And you can see that they're matched to a profile and they are also matched to the server. Perfect. So our channel creation officially works. Beautiful. So we actually have 2 more actions to do. One is the delete server and the other one is to leave server, which is an action that only guests have. Perfect. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and let's create a model for the delete server and for the leave server model. So first one I actually want to do is leave server model, because once we delete this server, that is automatically going to delete all the members as well. So make sure that once you click on manage members, you have at least 1 more member inside. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go ahead and click invite people. I will copy this URL and I'm going to log out, go into another account and paste this URL inside of my browser so I become a new member of this server. Alright, so I logged out and I'm not part of any servers in this account, so I get this prompt to create my own server. I'm going to paste that invite link inside of my URL here and now I should join the Code with Antonio server. There we go. And now the only option I have here is leave server. So let's go ahead and let's do that option here. Perfect. So first thing we have to do obviously is we have to go inside of hooks, use modal store. And after create channel, add leave server like this. So just leave server and we can leave the model data and everything else exactly as it is. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead inside of my components, models, and I'm actually going to copy this invite model because it's the simplest of all of these, so we can easily modify it to match our simple yes or no model. So copy the invite model and rename it to leave-server-model like this. Make sure you are inside of that file and rename the invite model to leave server model like that, and change this is model open to use the leave server like this. Now let's go ahead inside of our providers, model provider, and let's add that new one to the bottom. So leave server model like this. There we go. And I'm just going to rename this to add/components like that. Perfect. So now let's go inside of our components server header right here, and not the delete server, but the leave server, which only guests can see. Inside, add on click, arrow function, on open, leave server, and pass in the data of server inside of an object in the second argument like this, because we need to know what server to leave. Great. So now if I go ahead and try and click leave server, there we go, the invite friends model is opened. So I'm going to keep this opened, and now let's go ahead and let's slowly modify this. So go inside of components, models, leave a server model like this. Let's remove the origin. We're not going to need that, which means we can also remove the invite URL. Like that. We can remove the onCopy function and we can remove the onNew function like that. And inside of here, you can go ahead and you can remove everything inside of this div right here. So let's do it that way. I think it's going to be a bit simpler like that. So just have this div, have this simple dialog content, header, title, and I'm just going to say leave server inside. There we go. Now let's go ahead and let's change this title from invite friends to be leave server like this. Below this dialog title, let's bring back our dialog description from add/components UI dialog, so don't accidentally import it from Radix. So there we go, dialog description, okay. And inside I'm going to write, are you sure you want to leave? I'm gonna add a span element, and I'm gonna go ahead and write server ?name like this, and question mark at the end. So now it says, are you sure you want to leave edited server, which is what we renamed our server. Great, and let's go ahead and give this span a class name of font-semi-bold and text-indigo-500 like this. So now it says, are you sure you want to leave edited server? And let's give a class name to this dialog description here to be text-center and text-sync-500 like this. There we go. So are you sure you want to leave, and the name of the server here. So we already have the server destructured from the data because this was copied from the invite model server. Perfect. So let's go ahead now and let's add a dialog footer. So go outside of this dialog header right here, and we are going to remove this div, and we're going to add dialog footer from add/components UI dialog like this. So make sure you have that imported. Great. And let's go ahead and give this dialog footer a class name of bg-gray-100, px-6, and py-4 like this. And let's go ahead and add a div inside with a class name of flex items-center, justify-between, and w-full like this. Inside of that div, we're going to create two buttons. So add a button. We already have it imported. If you want to confirm, just make sure you have button from add/components UI button. So you should have this because we copied this from the invite model. And let's add cancel here like this, and let's copy and paste the button below that, and this one is going to be confirmed like this. There we go. So they are now on the sides. And for this first one, let's go ahead and let's give it a prop of disabled to be is loading. Do we have is loading? We do. Okay. On click for now is going to be just an empty function, and variant is going to be ghost like this. This one is going to be quite similar. So disabled, if we are loading the request, variant is going to be primary, and on click is going to be an empty arrow function for now. Great. So let's see where we get this loading from. Okay, that's here. We don't need this copied state, so we can remove that like this. And we actually don't need to destructure on open from the use model, and everything else can actually stay the same. Let's just clean up our imports. So we don't need use origin, we don't need the input, we don't need the label, and we don't need these Lucid React icons, but we are going to need Axios, so leave that here. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's actually use this on close button into this first button which says cancel. So instead of an empty arrow function, I'm gonna write on close here. So now once I click on cancel here, it should close the model, and once I click again, it should open it. Perfect. So that's what we want. And now let's do the confirm function here. So I'm gonna go to the top right here, and I'm going to write const on click to be an asynchronous arrow function. Open a try and catch block. For now, just log the error like that, and in the finally block, set is loading to false, which means in the try one we are doing set is loading to true, and then await Axios, which we have imported, .patch backticks /API/servers/ open an object server ?.id/leave like this. And then call the onClose function, router.refresh. Oh, we don't have the router. So let's go ahead and below the use model, add const router to be use router from next/navigation. So this import right here, I'm just going to move it to the top. There we go, router from next/navigation. So we have the router now, and now we can call router.refresh. And let's do router.push to a like this. Perfect. So now if I go ahead, and actually we did not assign this onClick, so let's just assign this onClick to this second button instead of this empty arrow function, like that. Okay, so now if I open my inspect element, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a 404 error. There we go, patch 404 not found. So let's go ahead and let's actually resolve this now. So we're going to go ahead and close everything. We're going to go inside of the app folder, API, servers, server ID, and create a new folder called leave, like this. And inside create route.ts, like that. There we go. So let's write export asynchronous function batch, like that, with a request. And let's extract the params. Params is an object of server ID string, like that. Let's open a try and catch error block. And let's just console log server ID leave error, so we know where it's coming from in development. And let's return new next response from next/server internal error with a status of 500, like that. Great. Now let's go ahead and get the current profile. So const profile is equal to await current profile from add/lib current profile, and I'm just going to separate these imports like that. If there is no profile, let's go ahead and return new next response unauthorized, like that, with a status of 401. Great. If there are no params that server ID, in that case, return new next response, server ID missing, like that, with a status of 400, like this. Great. So let me just do this and let me expand my window a bit. Okay, great. Now let's go ahead and let's write const server equals await db, which you can import from add/lib/db. So make sure you have this import. And it's going to be db.server.update, where ID is params.server ID and profile ID is not profile.id. So we ensure that admin cannot leave the server themselves. So any profile ID is okay, but not the profile ID that created the server, aka the admin. Okay, and now when we solved where is the ID, what is the profile ID, let's also solve the members. So only members can actually leave this. So let's write members sum profile ID to be profile.id, like that. And then we can write data members delete many profile ID profile.id, like that. Great. So let's take a look. So we are updating the server that matches the server ID. We are only doing this if the person leaving the server is not the person who created the server, aka the admin. We are confirming that the person who is trying to leave the server is actually a part of the members, and then we are deleting that profile. We are deleting that member using the matching profile ID from the members list. Perfect. And let's just do return next response .json server, like this. So now if I go ahead and try and click confirm, we have a loading state and I should be refreshed, and there we go. I'm not a part of any server, which means that I have to create a completely new server. So I'm just going to do that quickly. I'm going to use this image from Unsplash and I'm going to create my other profile server here, like this. And there we go. So now I'm just a part of this other server. Perfect. And now you can either create a new server like I just did, or you can log out and go into what for me is Code with Antonio server. Basically, I want you to be in a server where you are an admin so that we can do this delete server function now. So I'm going to do this inside of this account. You can log out and go back to the old one where you are the admin. Basically, just make sure you have the delete server function because that's the only one left here. So let's go back inside of our use model store. So I'm going to close everything here, go inside of hooks, use model store, and after leave server, add a delete server model like this. No need to modify anything else. Great. And now we can copy and paste this leave server model because it's a very simple confirm or cancel model, and we can easily reuse it. So I'm gonna go ahead and write delete-server-model like this. And let's name this delete server model. And let's change the isModel_open constant to be delete server like this. There we go. And now let's go ahead and let's add this to our components, providers, model provider right here. So at the bottom, I'm adding delete server model like that. And I'm going to replace this import with /components like this. Now let's go ahead and let's go inside of components, server header right here, find the delete server one and add on click to be an arrow function which calls on open, and it says delete server, and let's also pass in the server as the data like this. There we go. So now if you try, make sure you're an admin of this server so you have all these options, and click delete server, and there we go, it says leave server. Great. And instead of saying leave server, it's actually going to say delete server. So let's go inside of our models, find the delete server model, and there actually isn't too much to modify here. So let's go ahead and let's find our text that says, are you sure you want to leave? And instead of leave, well, actually, we're not going to do this. Let's first change the title, which is going to say delete server like this. And now let's change the description to say, are you sure you want to do this like that? Add a break like this, and then add a span, which is going to say server ?name will be permanently deleted like this. And let's give this span a class name of text-indigo-500 and font-semi-bold like this. So let's see how that looks now. Once I click on delete server, there we go. Are you sure you want to do this? Server name will be permanently deleted. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's just change the onClick here. So instead of going to patch server ID leave, is going to do axios.delete /API/servers, and no need for the leave one. So we are going to add a new delete function inside of our existing route for update, where we already have this route, we use it to update the server. So now we're just going to add a new one to delete one. Great, so let's do that route now. I'm going to close everything, make sure you save that file, go inside of app, API, servers, server ID, and in this route.ts like this. So we already have the patch function here. So what we can do is we can just copy that patch function. Okay, let me just see, I changed something here, just a second. Okay, so basically just find this patch function here, and you can go ahead and copy the entire patch function and just above that paste it like this and rename this patch to delete like this. Perfect. Now our delete function is going to look for the current profile, but no need to look for this information because we're not going to have it. Perfect. And this one is going to be a bit simpler, so no need to pass any data. And instead of using db.server.update, we're just going to do .delete like this. There we go. And instead of server ID patch, it's going to be server ID delete in this catch function. So a very simple delete function, which we copied from this patch function. Perfect. And I think that this should already work. Let's go ahead and try this out. So now once I click confirm, it's loading, and it should be a similar action when I left one. There we go. So now it works. We officially have no servers. So I'm gonna go ahead and create my another server. I'm gonna call it code with Antonio2 like this. Let's go ahead and let's just quickly confirm that all of our actions are working. So we have invite people, I can generate new links with no errors, I can go ahead and change the server settings. So code with Antonio 3 and save that, for example. There we go. It works. It works here as well. I can manage members like this. Perfect. I can create a new channel. That works. And I can delete this server. Perfect. So you completely finished all the actions needed, both for the guest view, for the moderator view, and for the admin view. Great, great job. So now let's go ahead and let's create an item below this drop down right here, which we are going to use to search for our items. So I'm talking about this space below this code with Antonio navbar right here. So we finished all of these drop down items. So now we're going to create a new component, which is going to be used to search throughout the entire server. So let's go inside of our components. Let's go inside of server sidebar right here. And what we have to do is we have to go below the server header here and add a scroll area from /UI scroll area. So I'm going to replace this with /components UI scroll area like this. Great. Let's go ahead and give this scroll area a class name of flex-1 and px-3. And inside, create a div with a class name of margin top 2 like that. And inside of that div, the first item we are going to add is server search like this. If we save, we are going to get an error because server search is not defined. So let's go inside of this server folder and create a new file, server-search.tsx like this. Mark this as US client and go ahead and export const server search and just return a div saying server search component like this. Now go back to your server sidebar and import this server search from /server search like this. So same thing we did with the header. And now the error should go away. And while you're developing this, please be in desktop mode so you can actually see this server search component here. So either expand your screen or zoom out a bit. Great. So now let's write the interface for the server search. So go back inside of the server search component right here and let's create an interface server search props like this. So it's going to have a data, which is going to be an object, which is going to be an array like this. And now let's fill in this data right here. So it's going to have a label, which is a type of string. It's going to have a type, which is going to be either a channel or a member like this. And it's going to have its own data, which is going to have an icon, which is react.react node. It's going to have a name, which is a string, and it's going to have an ID, which is a string as well. And this is also going to be an array like this, pipe undefined like this. There we go. So now let's go ahead and let's just destructure this data here. So data, and let's assign this props right here, server search props like this. Great. So now we have to go back inside of server sidebar and we actually have to fill that data property here. Before we do that, let's go ahead and let's create some icon maps right here. So I'm going to go below this interface in the server sidebar and I'm going to write const icon map like this. And I'm going to write channel type, which we already have imported here. So make sure you have channel type from @prisma/client like that. So if channel type is text, we're going to go ahead and render an icon of hashtag. So hash from Lucid React. So make sure you import the hash from Lucid React and I'm just going to move it to the top right here. So make sure you have this. Great. So we have this hash now and I'm just going to expand my screen a bit and zoom out even more just so I can see this sidebar here. And I'm going to give this hash a class name of margin right 2, h-4 and w-4 like this. Let's go ahead and copy this 2 more times. The second one is going to be audio and the last one is going to be video like that. And let's also not forget to add the commas at the end of these objects here. Great. So now we have the audio and let's give this a mic icon, so a microphone, and let's give this one a video icon. So all of them are from Lucid React. Make sure you have those imported. So hash, mic, and video from Lucid React. Great. So now that we have the icon map, let's go ahead and write const role icon map like this. And in here, we're going to work with member role. So add that from Prisma client as well. Make sure you have it imported here at the top. So if member role is guest, we are not going to display any icon. So you can just write null. Now, if member role is moderator, in that case, we're going to go ahead and we're going to render a shield check from Lucid React. So make sure you have the shield check imported from Lucid React like this. And let's go ahead and give it a class name of h-4, w-4, margin left-2 like this, text-indigo-500, and that's it. And actually not margin left, but margin right, my apologies, like this. So let me expand this even more to see if I can fit that in one line. Basically, it's supposed to be like this, just in one line. And just copy it one more time and change this moderator role to admin like this. And instead of shield check, it's going to be shield alert from Lucid React. And don't forget to add a comma right here for the moderator. So we have the guest, which is null, moderator, which is shield check, and admin, which is shield alert. So make sure you have shield alert, shield check, video, mic, and hash imported from Lucid React right here. Perfect. So now that we have here, now that we have both the icon map and the role icon map, we can go ahead and we can actually generate the data needed for the server search, because we have the text channels, audio channels, video channels, and members. So let's go ahead inside of this server search here, and let's write data, which is going to be an array of objects. So first object is going to have a label of text channels like this. It's going to have a type of channel. It's going to have its own data, which is going to be text channels (map), get the individual channel like that, and return an immediate object like this with an ID of channel.id, name of channel.name, and icon of icon map, channel.type. Like this. So make sure you don't accidentally use the role icon map. We are only using icon map for now for these channels. Great. So you can copy and paste this, just add a comma here like this. The second one is going to be voice channels. So inside of our system, we're going to call them audio channels, but I think for user experience, it's maybe better to call them voice channels, right? So type is still channel, but instead of iterating over text channels, we are now iterating over audio channels, which we have separated in this constant right here by filtering through channel type. Great. And this can stay the same. And now let's go ahead and copy this one more time. Just remember to add a comma here. This one is going to be video channels like this, and instead of audio channels, it's video channels like that. So just make sure you have both text channels, audio channels, video channels, and also a constant for members here. So let's go ahead now and let's add the last element here. So add a comma, and you can copy and paste this like this. And instead of a label being video channels, the label is just going to be members like this. And type is going to be member, because we are no longer working with channels here. So we know how to work if user clicks on that in the search. And instead of iterating over video channels, we're going to iterate over members like this. And instead of using the channel name for this, we're going to call that member like that. So it's going to be member.id. Name is going to be member.profile.name. And icon is going to be not icon map, but a role icon map, and not channel.type, but it's going to be member.role like this. There we go. Perfect. So we have everything needed for our server search component. You should have no errors here if you've written this interface correctly. And now let's go ahead and let's actually style this server search so it doesn't just say server search like it does now. If I zoom in, it's just saying a server search component. So let's just modify that a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this and add a fragment instead. And I'm going to add a native HTML button element, which is going to have a paragraph in which we will say search like this. And let's go ahead and give this button a class name. So this button is going to have a class name of group px-2, py-2, rounded-md, flex, items dash center like this, gap dash x dash 2 like this, w dash full, hover bg dash sync dash 700 slash 10. On dark mode, hover is going to be bg dash sync dash 700 slash 50 like this, and it's also going to have a transition like that. Great. Now let's go ahead and you can see how that looks when I hover. Quite nice effect. And now let's go ahead and give this paragraph. Actually, let's go above the paragraph and let's just add a search icon from Lucid React. It is a self-closing tag, and make sure you have search from Lucid React imported. And let's go ahead and style it by giving it a class name of w-4 h-4 text-sync-500, and on dark mode it's going to be text-sync-400 because it looks just a tiny bit better and we like details. And now let's go ahead and do the class name for the paragraph. So paragraph is going to have a class name of font-semi-bold text-sm text-sync-500 like this. Dark is going to have text-sync-400 to match the icon. Group-hover, so when we hover on the button, text-sync-600 is going to change the color to, but on dark mode, on hover, BG is going to change. Oops, my apologies. So we're not here yet. So after the group-hover text-sync-600, go ahead and write dark group-hover text-sync-300 like this, and just add a transition like that. Great. So let's go ahead and let's see how this looks. There we go. Great. Great. And now let's go ahead below this paragraph and let's go ahead and add a KBD element like this, which is just going to say a span like this, and inside you're going to go ahead and write CMD like this, or control. So I'm using Mac, so I'm going to write CMD like this, and then K like this. So it's going to be a shortcut. Okay. And let's go ahead and give this CMD a class name of text-extra small like this. And let's go ahead and write a big class name for this KBD. So class name is going to be pointer-events-none inline-flex h-5 select-none items-center gap-1 rounded border. So just border to activate the border, bg-muted like that. px is going to be 1.5, font is going to be mono, text is going to be of 10 pixels, so very small text like this. Font is going to be medium, text is going to have a muted foreground color, opacity, actually, we don't need opacity, and let's just do ML-auto like this. There we go. Great. So you can see how we have a nice little shortcut here. Great. So that was a lot of code for just this, but I think it's worth it because it looks quite nice here. But one thing I want to replace, I don't want to write this CMD like this. I actually want to use a small little icon for that, but I'm not sure what is the shortcut for it. So I just copied it and pasted it from my project right here. And you can see, let me just expand to show you how this looks now. You can see that now it looks much better, right? I'm not sure how to do that icon, so you can go to my project and just copy it, or you can leave this as CMD, or you can leave it at control, depending on whether you're using Windows or MacBook, right? But I want to use that small little icon because I think it just looks nicer, but I'm just not sure how to display that manually. So how to do a shortcut which triggers that icon. So decide for yourself whether you want to use this icon. You can copy it from my GitHub, or you can just do control like this. So I'm going to leave it at the icon. And now let's go ahead and let's go inside of ShadCN here and let's find the command. So we have to use this command component right here. This is what it's going to look like. And let's find the installation. So copy it for npm like this. Let's go inside of our terminal here. I'm going to shut down Prisma Studio. We no longer need that. So I can just shut down that terminal as well. And let's install npx shadcnui at latest add command like this. So just press Y to confirm this installation. And after that is done, you can go ahead and run npm run dev again. Great, so I'm going to close this. And let's go ahead and just refresh our localhost here. I'm just going to expand it a bit. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add a state right here in the server search const open set open to be use state from React, and default value is going to be false. So import this use state from React right here. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and let's add an onClick to this button to trigger onClick, an arrow function set open to be true like this. Great. And outside of this button right here, let's go ahead and let's add command dialog from /UI/command like this. So make sure you have the command dialog from /UI command, and I'm going to replace it to /components like this and separate it from the other imports. Perfect. Let's go ahead and give it an open prop to match our open, and on open change is going to be set open like this. Great. Let's go ahead and write command input here from /components UI command. It is a self-closing tag. Make sure you have it imported here. So everything we're going to import is going to come from this right here. Let's go ahead and let's give this a placeholder of search all channels and members like this. And now go ahead and add command list from /components UI command. So make sure you have that. And go ahead and add command empty from /components UI command. Again, just confirm that you have that. And inside, you're going to write no results found like this. And let's see if we can already test this. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and there we go. You can see that when I click on the search, it opens this small little model. So I'm actually going to keep it open like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's iterate over our data here that we are passing. So all channels, all text channels, audio, video channels, and members. So outside of the command empty, add data.map. Go ahead and destructure the label, type, and data like this. And go ahead, open an arrow function, write if data length return null. So if there are no items, we can just return null. Otherwise, go ahead and return a command group from /components UI command. So make sure you have command group imported here. And inside, let's go ahead and give it a key of label, and let's give it a heading of label as well. And let's go ahead and let's write data (map). So this is this inner data now, (map), and go ahead and destructure the ID, icon, and name like this, and return command item from /components UI command. So again, make sure you have that imported as well. Let's give the command item a key of ID like that. Let's go ahead and render the icon, and let's go ahead and write span name like this. There we go. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and let's write our onClick functions, which are going to activate once we click on this individual command item. So you can see how this looks. So I only have the general channel here, so that's the only thing showing. But if I create a new channel, let's say an audio channel, and write test audio. So let's create that because we finished all of that. And if I try now, you can see that I have a voice channel. And if I go ahead and create a video channel saying test-video here, you can see that in my search, I now have a video channel, audio channel, and a general channel. And one more thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to go ahead and invite some people here. So I'm going to go here. I'm going inside of my other account and I will invite myself. So I just joined, I logged in into another account. I'm pasting the invite link right here. And there we go. Now I am a guest here. And you can see that I can see the other members now. And you can see how this one has a shield icon right here because they are an admin. Perfect. So what I want to do is I just want to actually go back to my admin view rather than this one. Perfect. And while we're here, it seems to me that we are showing an indigo color for this admin. So let's just quickly fix that. So keep this open and go back inside of your server sidebar and find the role icon map right here. And for the admin, instead of text indigo, use text rose because it should be red. There we go. So now it looks better. Now it's indicating that this is an admin right here. Perfect. So now log out and go back into the admin of this account. Sorry, this server. Great, so I am back as an admin here, and if I click on search, you can see that I can see the guest member right here, and you can try and search, and you can see that it works for video, audio, general. So absolutely amazing. Users can now quickly access any any channel or member inside of this project. Perfect. What I want to do now is, well, first let's actually create this shortcut that when we press Command key or Control key, it actually opens this without us needing to click manually here. So go back inside of your server search component, which is located inside of Components, server search right here, where we have all these command items. And let's go at the top right here, just below the use state. And let's create a use effect. So use effect from React like this. Make sure you imported use effect from React. And inside, let's write const down to be an event of keyboard event like this. And let's go ahead and write if event.key is equal to k and e.meta_key or e.control key like this. So if that's the case, in that case, go ahead and e.prevent_default and set open, reverse of the current state like this. And now go ahead and write document.add_event_listener like this, key down, activate the function down, and on unmount, go ahead and write document, remove event listener on key down, and the down function like this. So let me just expand my screen so you can see this use effect. So we are watching for the key K and the meta key or the control key, and then we trigger the manual open and we add that listener to the document and we return the listener to prevent overflows. So now if I try command key, you can see that it opens my command to search general and other stuff right here, and I can also click on it manually. Beautiful job. So I can actually trigger that manually now, which is great. And let me just zoom that in. What we are going to do now is we're going to create functions which are going to happen once we select any of these items. So we want to redirect to those channels or to those members. So let's go ahead and let's add the parameters and the router. So const router is equal use router from next/navigation, and const params is equal use params from next/navigation as well. So make sure you have use params and use router from next/navigation like this. Great. And now what I'm going to do is write an onClick function just below this use effect. So const onClick like this. Let's go ahead and accept the ID and the type in this function. And let's write the props for that, which are going to be ID of type string, and type is going to be channel. And let me just expand my screen. So channel or member like this. And let's go ahead and open this function like that. So let me zoom out so you can see how this is supposed to look. So we have an ID and type, and the type of ID is string, and the type can only be channel or member like this. And once we select something, we're going to turn off that command. So set open is going to be false like that. If type is equal to member, in that case, we're going to return router.push open backticks /servers /params !server ID /conversations /ID of that member like that. And if type is channel, in that case, we're going to return router.push backticks /servers /params !server ID /channels /ID like that. Perfect. So now if you try, well, first we can try it. We have to assign this on click to the command item. So go ahead and find the command item, which currently only has the key ID, and add on select to be an arrow function, which calls the on click and passes in the ID and the type like this. So I'm going to zoom out so you can see it in one line. So command item has the key, and on select, on click, and passes in the ID of that current item alongside with the type of the group which it is in. So if it is a channel, we are going to redirect to /channels. If it is a member, we are going to redirect to /conversations and then that member's ID. So if you try any of those right now, you're going to get a 404 request. On general, there we go, a 404 request. And if I try on a member, there we go as well, a 404 request. That's because none of these pages exist yet. We have not created any chat pages yet, but all of these are gonna be chat pages. Great, so you finished the second component here, and now we can go ahead and actually render our channels and the rest of our members in this sidebar. So now let's go ahead and let's create a list of our channels and our members in this sidebar right here. So make sure you are in desktop mode so that you can see this sidebar here. I'm going to close everything, and I am going inside of my components, server sidebar right here. So last thing we did was this server search right here. So what we are going to do now is a list of all of our channels. So let's go ahead and find the end of this div which holds the server search. So right here, but still inside of the scroll area. And let's go ahead and let's add the separator from /UI separator. So don't accidentally import that from Radix. So I'm going to change this to add components like this, and I'll just move it with the other stuff up there. And let's go ahead and give this separator a class name of bg-sync-200. On dark mode, it's going to use bg-sync-700, rounded-md, and my-2 like this. Great, and I'm just going to refresh this, and there we go. You should see a very small line here. So now let's go below this separator here, and let's write text channels.length like this, and go ahead and add double exclamation points at the start and add a question mark here. So we are going to turn this into a boolean, right? So this is going to result to either true or false. So if the length is a positive number, that means that we can go ahead and render the text channels. And if it is a negative number, it's going to turn into a false, meaning that we will not render those channels. So go ahead and write end like this. And inside, go ahead and add a div with a class name of margin bottom 2 like this, and inside you're going to render a server section, which is a self-closing tag. Right now server section doesn't exist, so that is going to throw an error. So let's go ahead inside of our components a server and create a new file, a server-section.tsx like this. Go ahead and mark this as use client like this, and let's export const server section and just return a div saying server section like this. and go back to your server sidebar, and now you can import the server section from /server section. So let's check that out. So we have the header, search, and now we have the server section, and no error should appear now, and you should have a small text saying server section in your server sidebar. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's add the props inside of this server section. So go back inside of this component and write interface, server section props, label is going to be a string, role is going to be an optional member role. Make sure to import that from Prisma client like that. Section type is going to be either channels or members like that. Channel type is going to be an optional channel type from @prisma/client again, so member role and channel type like that. And server is going to be optional with a type of server with members with profiles from @/types. So I'm going to separate those two, and there we go. So those are our types. So now let's go ahead and let's extract all of those: label, role, section type, channel type, and a server. And let's map the props. So server section props like that. Great. So now let's go back inside of our server sidebar and let's assign all of those props here. So key, my apologies, not key, section type is going to be channels like this. Channel type is going to be channel type, which we already have imported here, .text like this. Role is going to be our current role, which we already defined in a constant in this server sidebar. And label is going to be text channels like this. Great. So just confirm that you have the channel type imported from @Prisma client, and make sure that you have this constant role, which looks to the server members and looks at your own and then extracts the role out of that. And then we pass that here, and that is the current logged in user's role. Perfect. So now let's go back inside of this server section and let's start developing. So inside of the server section here, go ahead and give this div a class name of flex items-center justify-between and py-2 like that. Go ahead and remove this div and create a paragraph which is going to render the label, which now says text channels. And let's go ahead and give this paragraph a class name of text that's extra small, uppercase, font-semi-bold, text-sync-500, and on dark mode we're going to use text-sync-400 like that. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's conditionally render some actions for this channel section. So if role is not member role.guest, so if we are either a moderator or an admin, and if section type is equal to channels like that, so I'm just going to zoom out so you can see it in one line. In that case, go ahead and render the following. We are going to render an action tooltip from /action tooltip. So go ahead and import this from add/components action tooltip like this. And inside, sorry, not yet, but let's go ahead and let's give this action tooltip a label of create channel and the side of top like this. And let's go ahead and let's create a native HTML button element here, which is going to hold our plus sign from Lucid React. So make sure you import the plus sign from Lucid React, and I'll just move it to the top here. And let's go ahead and give this plus sign a class name of h-4 and w-4. And let's go ahead and give this button a class name of text-sync-500, hover text-sync-600. Dark mode is going to use text-sync-400. Dark is going to also, dark hover is going to be text-sync-300 and transition like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and take a look at how that looks now. So if you are not an admin, you will not be able to see this plus button. So make sure that you're an admin or a moderator in this server. And now you can see that we have the text channels, and I can use a shortcut to create a channel from here. And we can actually already add a model to trigger that. So let's go ahead to the top of this server section, and let's use our good old open from use modal. From /hooks, use modal store like this. So make sure you import this. And now what you can do is use this button to add an on click here like that, and call on open. And we're going to call the create channel like this. So you can see that now, once you click on this plus icon, a create channel option appears. Beautiful. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's add some alternative options, because this server section is also going to be used to load a list of our members, and we're not going to have a plus icon to add new members. Instead, we're going to have a cog or a settings icon, which is going to open the manage members portal from the sidebar as well. So go below this conditional right here and create a new conditional saying if role is equal to member role.admin, so only admin can access this, and if section type is equal to members, then go ahead and render the following. Again, we're going to render an action tooltip. In fact, maybe let's not write this all over again. Let's just copy everything inside of this conditional and paste it like here. There we go. So like that. And let's go ahead and let's just change a couple of stuff. So instead of this being a plus, this is going to be settings like this from Lucid React. So make sure you import that like this. And instead of on open create channel, this one is going to open members and a data server, which we have from our prop. Perfect. So we cannot yet see this because we have not added that specific member section yet, but you're going to see it very soon. But that's it for our server section inside. Now what we have to do is go back to our server sidebar where we render the server section here, and let's go ahead and iterate over our text channels and map them. So text channels.map individual channel like this, and let's go ahead and let's return a server channel like this. And once you save, you're going to get an error because that does not exist. So let's go and create that. So I'm going to go inside of my server again. So this is inside of the components folder, and create a new file, server-channel.tsx like that. Let's mark this as use client like this. And let's write export const server channel like that, and return a div saying server channel like this. Very simple. Let's go back inside of our server sidebar and let's import this. So server channel like that from /server channel. So the same way we did with section, search, and header. Perfect. Let's go ahead and let's create an interface for this before we add any props here. So back in this newly created server channel component, go ahead and create an interface, server channel props like that. It's going to accept a channel, which is a type of channel from @prisma/client, a server, which is going to be a type of server, because we're not going to be working with members or their profiles, and an optional role of member role from @prisma/client like this. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's extract those here. So channel, server, and the role, and let's map them to the props, server channel props like that. And now let's go back inside of our server sidebar and let's give them everything they need. So first, let's do the key, which is going to be channel.id, and then let's do channel to be channel like this, role to be role, and server to be server like this. Let's go back inside of the server channel and let's actually do some development here. So first thing I want to do is create another icon map here.